items. The first one is a presentation on the future curricula of the Elsenburg Training Institute. We do know that for a considerable time, there have been questions regarding what the Constitution of South Africa says in terms of post-school or higher education. And then also later today, the committee previously asked for a demonstration regarding the new technologies used in agriculture. And we've heard some exciting news, and I think some of the members expressed an interest and a wish to be briefed on this and what this technology can mean and can bring to agriculture. And with that, I want to hand over first well, perhaps let me just give my other member who are here with me currently, who is with me, to an opportunity to also introduce herself. Thank you. Good. Thank you, Honorable Bartman. And I believe one of our members
it's a great honor for us to be hosting the committee here, and we're very happy that you came to Elsenburg today. We note the issues that we want to be briefed about is the future curricula of the Elsenburg College. We will be sharing a presentation on that, but also the drone tech. We will, and thankfully we have a good weather today. We'll be able to do some flights, drone flights, and we also took a gap chair that whilst you are here, perhaps we should also show you our agri-processing hub at the college, but also the wine cellar, which is part of our agri-processing mandate. You would have heard of our minister announcing earlier this year about the agri-processing on wheels. And I think what you will see today, if time permits, is the foundation of where that agri-processing on wheels project will be coming from. So if time permits, we'll be able to show you those two particular initiatives. But otherwise, we are happy to engage and ready to account and to answer all your questions. But maybe I should also allow my team to introduce themselves, starting with the lady on my left, and we go up to the end of the table. Thanks, Chair.
Good morning. I'm Rashida Wenzel, the Chief Director for Operational Support Services.
Good morning, Floris Huyshammer, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Ilse Troutman, Chief Director, Research in Technology Development Services.
Good morning, Mariki Cornelissen, Quality Management at the College.
Hayley Rodkin, Chief Director, Education and Training.
Sydney Babu, Office of the HOD.
Thank you. And can we go straight over to the presentation?
Yes, please, Chair. But maybe to just contextualize it, you would have heard about the plan by National to shift the colleges of agriculture to higher education. And I think we've reported to the committee previously about the fact that as a department in the province, we're not convinced that is the right approach. More so because there's not been an engagement at the executive level. And what we have done to date, we have, through our executive authority, had written to the Minister for Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, seeking for that engagement, and sadly that had not taken place. We are, as a department, cooperating with the National Department, providing whatever information is necessary, but also on our side, engaging with the University of Stellenbosch, who is responsible for the B.Agric degree here, and exploring options around which the offerings at the Elsenburg College cannot be lost, because we think that the whole approach will affect the industry broadly. But I think the presentation will highlight also some of our thinking going forward in terms of where we find ourselves. We talk about future curricula because we want to remain relevant given the climate change, the fourth IR, and the host of issues that confront agriculture. And the key question for us is how do we, going forward, prepare the skills that would be required for the future? And I think our presentation will also highlight some of the thinking around that. Although National is pushing, we also are pushing on our way to ensure that we need to do what we need to do to protect and support the agricultural sector in the Western Cape. With that said, Chair, with your permission, I would then want to ask the principal of the college, Ms. Hayley Rodkin, to take us through the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Chair and committee members, I'm just giving a moment for the presentation to be called up. But in the meantime, I will just take you through the contents. It's very similar to a presentation we did, Chair, in 2019 in terms of the history of the college. I'm sure the committee members are quite familiar with that, that this is the oldest, or safety, let me say, one of the oldest agricultural institutes on the African continent, having been established in 1898. And of course, we're very proud of the history and the track record, especially in training. And we are on page 3. Chairperson, would you prefer if I waited for the presentation to be called up for a few minutes, or should I proceed?
Do we have any indication? Is the presentation on somebody's
It's,
computer that
I
can be
think
shared?
Sydney just lost the link for a moment.
Perhaps, can I just ask then that unless you have included it in your presentation, I haven't seen the presentation yet, can you perhaps just share with us also what communication has there been between the colleges? What is the national debate? Have you received any official communication from Department of Higher Education and Training? If there are some of those aspects that are not covered in your presentation, perhaps if you wouldn't mind until it's brought onto the screens, perhaps you can just share that with us as well, because I'm not sure if from our invitation that was made clear to you as well. Thank you.
Chair, that's no problem. As a group of agricultural institutions, we are formed under APAC, which is the Association of Principals of Agricultural Colleges, and we have regular conversations with the rest of the colleges. In fact, we had an extensive meeting on Friday, which was hosted by DALBID, the National Department of Agriculture. And we have similar meetings almost on a monthly basis where they're either requesting updated information to assist them with their process in terms of human resource issues, finance. I'm sure that our CFO on this side will talk to some of those issues much more later on in the presentation, if necessary. However, one of the issues that arose on Friday was, in fact, the establishment, the human resources establishment for the colleges, the concerns around whether there would be enough resourcing to meet our mandates, because
And now?
of course, one size fits all is not the current situation. So there's a lot of debate around that. The different levels of resourcing, both financially, human resources, infrastructure, and so on. Then, of course, the issue of course content, because we also have differences across the country in terms of whether all colleges are offering a agriculture degree versus diplomas versus short courses, and how in the future model, because of course National is talking about semi-autonomous, autonomous models, which as the APAC requested for further information, because there is quite a bit of clarity now in terms of transferring the current structures to National, how that would proceed, because National's answer around that has been that nothing much will change, but we have requested what is the thinking beyond us reporting to a line function within a national department, if that happens in the future, versus being autonomous and semi-autonomous. And that, Chairperson, is the nub of the matter, because there has been no clarity on that.
seems to me the presentation is ready to roll. So thank you very much. If you could turn to that, ma'am.
So then a key milestone was achieved in 1976 with the establishment of the diploma in solar technology. And of course, we know that many of South Africa's winemakers today were trained through the Elsenburg Institute. And since 2004, we've been in a partnership with the University of Stellenbosch to present the Bachelor of Agriculture. Our current training programs in the agricultural skills development sub-directorate involves a learnership program which is offered on NQF level 4 in both plant and animal production. We also then offer specialized short courses and skills programs which could take anything over a period of 3 to 5 days and involve vegetable production, irrigation, trainer maintenance, financial management, entrepreneurship, and of course during the COVID pandemic last year, we've also offered short courses on COVID readiness. We've also got a short skills program that lasts from 4 to 6 weeks, and that usually we encourage as a building block into a learnership qualification around plant production or animal production, and that is offered on NQF level 1 to 4. If you move to page 6, the future offering around skills development and the alignment with occupational qualification sub-framework. We are moving towards accreditation to offer occupational qualifications such as orchard and vineyard foreman, livestock farm supervisor, and poultry farmer courses. And we are currently in the process to ensure institutional compliance and our training delivery readiness. The new OQSF alignment will be offered from January 2023, which means that our current intake of learnership, the last registration for that will be 2022. Moving on to other link processes around the recognition of prior learning. We are currently in the process of RPLing 200 beneficiaries across the Western Cape. And this process commenced in 2020, where we identified qualifying candidates, and in 2021, their portfolios of evidence, practical skills, and theoretical knowledge is currently being assessed. And this takes about 20 hours per candidate, so it is quite a tedious process. I've touched on the accreditation.
Sorry, Ms. Rodkin, I just got received feedback that apparently the online visitors to this meeting are struggling to hear you. We hear you quite well here inside the room, but I don't know which microphone is being used to stream. But perhaps if you could just speak a little bit closer to the microphone. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Chair. I hope that this will be better. So let me repeat that the accreditation for the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations process is currently underway, and hopefully 2023 we will be ready to proceed with the alignment to the QCTO. In terms of higher education and training, on page 8, we have implemented our new 3-year diploma program. which entails 2 years on-campus theoretical and practical learning, and a third year work integrated learning, which involves scheduled theory courses presented on campus, but the majority of the time is spent on farm work. Students specialize in one of the following for the first 2 years: plant and animal production, or then just plant production, animal production, cellular technology. In the third year, they have a choice of specializing in agronomy, aquaculture, large stock poultry, small stock horticulture, cellular technology, and we've just given you a breakdown of the students registered and employed as winemakers since 2017. And you can see from the little table that we've almost got a 95% and above employability figure for our winemakers. Of course, the 13 registered students for 2021 will hopefully graduate by the end of this year. And then just a short note on graduation is, of course, that I'm very proud to say, was the only college that completed the academic year in 2020 and graduated in 2020. We had that was a physical graduation, and then in April this year, we had a small virtual graduation for a small group of students who couldn't complete. So that was quite a feat given the pandemic, Chair. In terms of the diploma, we are currently reviewing the appropriateness and the relevance of our training program. And of course, that's a timeous process. And as well as the fact that we are conducting a follow-up evaluation study as the Department of Agriculture on the employability of all of our students. But particularly for the B.Agric students, we have an employability rate of 71%, as shown in a study done in 2016, which then takes us to the B Bachelor of Agriculture degree, which is offered in collaboration with Stellenbosch University, which means that our students register both with SU and with Elsenburg. And of course, the 3-year degree covers the fields that I mentioned before: plant, animal production, cellular technology or enology, extension and plant production, or extension and animal production. Of course, the B.Agric is offered on NQF level 7 and is registered with SACWA, and so is the diploma in agriculture. Our learnership program is accredited by AgriCETA, and that, as I mentioned before, is valid until March 2023. Our partnerships, we have various partnerships with many external industry academic partners, as well as governmental departments. Obviously, intradepartmentally, we work closely with our colleagues in agriculture, and we also work with a range of government departments, both nationally and provincially. I'm not going to go through all of the partnerships. I just wanted to note that given the 4th IR primacy and alternate learning methods, we've been working with the University of Western Cape on immersive technology, and the particular model is one that involves tractor maintenance, and hopefully we will expand on that in the future. We've got international partnerships, and the oldest cooperation agreement is with Burgundy, France, and that was signed in 2002. And we operate on clearly a number of academic matters, but as well as agriculture, trade and tourism. So our current focus, even though we can't engage physically, we still have online engagement, but we also have sports. The rugby exchange didn't happen last year. We are talking about the possibility of that happening next year. We are busy with a small English-French translation project, but of course the focus this year will be on developing online webinars, learning material. I'm going to move on to just briefly noting, of course, we've got partnerships with industry and commodity formations, and there's a whole list that you can refer to. We've also got a group of alumni under the Altenburg Cellular Technology Association. I'm going to move to Chairperson, to the statistical information on page 18. Other some of the stats. For our learnership program, there is a breakdown for the past 5 years. And the number of graduates, of course, noting that the learnership is over 1 year. And you'll see the figures for the graduation. So in 2017, we had 105 students registered, 80 graduated. In 2020, we had 68 registered and 58 graduated, which in itself was quite a feat given the challenges of last year. We've got 58 students registered, and hopefully they will all complete the course in 2021. Noting that registration was a bit of a challenge because of various challenges around wariness around being physically on campus, the ability to combine physical and online learning. And I'm talking about students now who then chose to maybe delay registration for another year, should we be able to return fully to campus. I should note that our entire year this year is a combination of online and physical classes. So we rotate in 2 groups. First years attend class over 2-3 weeks and then leave campus, and then our more senior students, 2nd and 3rd years, come to campus and then go off for a slot of online, which we of course call blended learning. And I think we found some kind of comfortable rhythm in comparison to last year, which was, and I say this transparently, it was a scramble to put all the pieces together, but we found a way to work that's workable for our lecturers as well as for our students. And clearly our first years came to campus being more comfortable learning online. However, that's not to say that there are still challenges, because physical contact is always preferable when you are a practical-based course, but we have found various solutions working online on our Moodle platform, lecturers developing their own little course contents. Moving on to the diploma, which was the old diploma, which is now phased out since 2019. I'm not going to get into the stats for that, and rather focus on our new diploma, which we implemented in 2020. Our first year registration was 165 students, and obviously they will graduate hopefully in 2022. But we do have a 3rd year batch because we worked out a mechanism where we allowed students who did the old diploma to articulate into the new course. So they went into 2nd year in 2020, and hopefully we will have a group of graduates at the end of 2021. Moving on to the BAgric degree, the 5-year statistics is up for you to see. In 2017, we had 272 totally registered over the 3 years, and in final year we had 113. We had 62 graduate versus 2020, where we had 280 as a full complement of BAgric students. In the final year we had 87, and we had 72 graduate, which by all measures was quite an accomplishment given the challenges that 2020 threw at us. In 2021, we've got a full complement of 253 students, and we've got 99 final year students, which in itself is also testament to the fact that our rapid blended model was successful to the extent that we could move second year students into the third year phase, 99 of them. We've also got a separate equine studies program, and you will see that since 2017, there's been a huge measure of success of graduating the students. 2020 was a bit of a challenge because of the physical nature of equine studies, and that's also reflected in the registration for 2021, where students were not comfortable registering for such a physical course under the current pandemic situation. However, we're working on a short course module to overcome those challenges, because we do have students interested in continuing the equine studies. The future curricula chair of the college, we are busy engaging in a review of both the content of our partnerships with Stellenbosch University, UWC, the Free State University, and we are working on having a series of guest lecturers to increase the impact on our course content. And particularly, we're going to focus on integrating climate change and the 4IR into our general study plans. And just as a side note, and one of the reasons you're here today is that we've had staff and students graduate as drone pilots and being licensed to do so. We've realized that we need to be more agile around developing the rationales for our study plans, and we need to reflect the global changes that's taking place in sustainable resource management and agriculture, and look at an increase in the course content around agri-processing, regenerative agriculture, agri-tourism, and business, for example. And these should be underlined by new teaching methodologies. I've spoken quite a bit about the blended learning approach, but how do we make that more accessible, given our resources at hand, the needs of the students? How do we factor in all of those variables to come up with new methodologies? We are working with specialists, academic specialists, such as Prof. Stephanie Midgley, Prof. Johan van Niekerk, and we will also engage with specialists in other departments across the country. On page 24, we have a summary of the budget. I'm not going to go into the fine detail. It is there for you to see, but noting just to round up the figures that our budget is 57.4 million for the year. Chairperson, thank you very much. I'm not sure if there's anything else that you want me to address, other than the issue you've noted around the shift from national from provincial to national. I'm not going to repeat that because we've had a small discussion on that already.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rodkin. Are there anybody that would like to add anything to the presentation, or can we go over to questions? Thank you, honourable members. Then over to you for questions. And I trust that Ms. Niekerk will draw my attention if there are any of our members online that would also like to pose a question. Ms. Bartman, you're recognized. Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation. And first, I just want to say, well done. When you look at the impact COVID has had, especially on the education sector, and even though we are also speaking about the agriculture sector, but Elsenburg as a college within the educational sphere. And I remember years ago at Stellenbosch University, we actually had a whole international conference on going online before any of the respective disasters hit us. And some of, I think, perhaps the older colleagues didn't want to believe or move into that sphere. And then COVID happened, and then platforms such as Moodle was already available. And I see that you are expanding, which is well done, especially with the drone pilot licensing and the immersive 3D technology. You got well done. But in terms of questions, and I know the doctor knows, and I've been speaking to him about Laingsburg as a constituency, and that's my constituency. And for me, what is very difficult is over the past year, 2 years, we've been assisting Laingsburg high school students to apply to tertiary education. And myself and a counsellor have been running it as almost a side project where I'll put my printer in my boot and my certification stamps, and we'll go, and if you need to open an email, we'll quickly buy a SIM card and we'll rika you and alles, you know, and it's difficult because Laingsburg only has one high school, just one. Last year, Laingsburg had 55 students at Laingsburg High School, which was the most ever in Laingsburg's history, that Laingsburg had 2 matric classes. Never before did Laingsburg have 2 matric classes. So it's 55 last year. On the 15th of June, I'm busy working with a teacher to go do Stellenbosch University applications again, because that university always closes first compared to the others. But the problem with Laingsburg is that Laingsburg High School doesn't have mathematics at all. So no child of Laingsburg will ever be able to study, for example, a B Agrig at Elsenburg College. That is just the fact. Unless you go to Worcester, Toes River area, or you go Beaufort, maybe side, no child of Laingsburg who goes to Laingsburg High School will be able to come and study at this college. But I do see, however, that you have learnership programs within the plant and animal production, that you have short courses of 3 to 5 days. And you mentioned the short courses that builds up to the learning qualifications, which is NQF levels 1 to 4. And I quickly just looked up on Google to remind myself what the NQF level 1 to 4 is. And it seems to range between grade 9 to grade 12. Now, if I go to Laingsburg High School and there are students who are interested in agriculture, could you maybe just give us some information on what would the requirements be for these NQF 1 to 4 if they, for example, wanted to apply to come here? How much, more or less average, do these programs cost? Are there bursaries available? Because also you must remember Laingsburg municipality is majority is indigent community. So when one student from Laingsburg gets to go study, the whole community benefits. And also Laingsburg is an agriculture hub. That's what they do, it's just agriculture. And then also, if they go study for these learnerships, short courses, and the ones that build up to the learner qualifications, What format do they take? Do they have to come here to Elsenburg? Is it hybrid? Can they do some of the internet online? We have also organized with the counselor that those studying elsewhere, and if it's online, they can go sit in the office and they have a schedule where they have to rotate. And what are the closing dates more or less every year? And once you have completed these programs, what are the employment opportunities? So in DDAT, what I do know is, and I don't know if agriculture does something similar, but in DDAT, they have a work skills program where they place you maybe in a learnership in a particular sector, and then depending on how well you do and whether the company still needs you, you can possibly be placed after that. So if you can just give us a little bit of that information. And then I also just wanted to know, you spoke about the partnerships with other cities. And if I remember correctly, and you must correct me please if I'm wrong, I thought that we also had a partnership with a truffle city of some sort in Italy with the Western Cape government. I'm not sure if it's in agriculture or if it's a different department maybe. But is that of any use to the agriculture Elsenburg College? And if so, what can we leverage off such an opportunity if we already have a trade agreement with them? And what did National say is the purpose of wanting Elsenburg to be transferred to the national government? Because in my mind, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I just want to know why what exactly is the purpose of wanting to take over Elsenburg College? Thank you, Chairperson.
Any other questions? Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for just arriving late. I think my GPS was disagreeing with me today. I'll rename it to be somebody else because it's been Diana. Now I'm off Diana. I'll call it Helen. Maybe it will work. But I just want to find out, I think some of the questions that I had, they will be answered with the questions that member Deirdre Batman has put through. But I want to find out in intake of the students, do you respond to the demand out there of the farmers, because we've got a good relationship with the farmers to know what are their needs? Are you doing the vetting to know what are the skills that are in demand per region, or you just do it generic for the whole province to say what are the needs there, or it's as and when that, you know, for this year, the needs is the drones, then it's going to be the drone only? Or if I can get the idea of how do you go about especially on the short courses, how do you go about in making sure that you really are going to supply to the needs within where the farms really need those skills? Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you then. And then I have a number of questions. Can I just quickly say, and perhaps I must declare my interest here. I used to be with an FET college, the old Boland FET college, which the colleges were kind of forced to merge under Professor Kader Asmal, similar to the universities. And I can just tell you that those mergers took place in the year 2000 roundabout, and they have just been given a staff establishment after more than 20 years. So in the last 20 years, unfortunately, you know, and your quality of staff is your biggest quality determinant in education. That's the first one. The second one is they're still working with highly outdated curricula. And you know, to write a curriculum is a relatively easy thing, but to then ensure that you have the right equipment, to have the right qualifications with staff, amongst your staff, etc., is a bigger challenge. And therefore, I'm grateful to hear that you've been engaging and asking, you know, please first show us, you know, how you see the future, and hopefully you will insist on having that in writing before serious negotiations can take place. Lastly, it's also been my understanding that agricultural colleges focus on the needs in their particular environment, and that I think in that respect, you know, Elsenburg will have some unique courses going forward, I hope, that will not be covered by other agricultural colleges. So please, if you could get clarity on that aspect as well. But then there are a few things amongst what you've shared with us that I would like to get some clarity. The first one is, if I understand you correctly, then there's something called the economics of education. In a primary school, if you are able to have, and Honorable Bartman just referred to that at high school level, if you've got more than 50 students, you can have 2 classes. It kind of makes sense to be able to divide a group of 50 into a class of 25. There are some of your figures that seem to me as if you may be struggling to really reach that economy of size in your classes. Perhaps you can just tell us, how do you manage that? Because I'm particularly concerned if you want to offer a program for 2 students, then the cost per student is extremely high. Also, by the way, in terms of recognition of prior learning, thank you for pointing out just how time consuming that can be. And please, my experience has been that quite often, once you recognize certain skills amongst your students or prospective students, then you must tailor make your program for them. So it's not an easy one for them to get credits for their prior learning. And in the past, I've often found it's just so much easier and more cost effective to say, please, you don't need to attend all the classes, but I'm sorry, you will still have to write the same exams or have the same assessment at the time, at the end. So your throughput rate was also a bit of a concern to me. If you start with almost 300 students and you have about 70 or 80, it seems to me as if there's a high dropout rate amongst the figures that you've shown. If I look at the first years and I look at those that graduate 3 years later, perhaps you can just tell us what is your actual throughput rate? And then my last question is just in terms of your current model, where some of the students spend 2-3 weeks at home. Do they have the access to online training for those 2 or 3 weeks? Or is it a matter of lost time that you will have to recover? And if there is some time lost, how do you recover it without requiring of your lecturers to work, without breaks and without vacations, etc.? And yeah, perhaps I can just say in terms of the relationship with higher education, if I can return to that one. While the Constitution recognizes higher education and training as a competency of the national government, it seems to me as if there may be some scope to also have a provincially funded institution, in the sense that, there are public institutions under higher education, but there are also private institutions. As if one may be looking at, I don't want to use the word hybrid, but to a unique model for institutions that are not directly responsible or accountable to higher education, but whose oversight and line of responsibility may be provincial, while obviously being recognized by higher education, more or less similar to what your private higher education institutions may be. Have you looked at that possibility as well? Thank you. I don't see any questions from members that are online. Good. Can we then go over to Dr. Simopetsa? First you, and then Ms. Rodkin, I presume.
Sure, indeed, Chair. I think, thank you for the questions. I would want to ask Ms. Rodkin to start, Ms. Wenzel to also add, particularly on the questions relating to young people and questions that were raised largely by Member Bartman. What are the requirements? What is the cost? Do we have any bursaries and issues like that? And then I'll cover the rest of the questions that they would not be able to respond to. Thanks.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. Thanks for the encouragement, Advocate Department. Indeed, it is a challenge, and we've actually worked with a school in Maritzburg, and maybe after this we need to see if there's a follow-up. We can do a similar process we can do in Laingsburg. We also do work with our team under Mrs. Wenzel to encourage a continuous process from school-going age right through to post-matric, but I will confine myself to the post-matric issues you've raised. So firstly, the learnership. There's no cost, academic cost to the student. We, through AgriCETA, apply for stipends because the learnership works on a 1 month on campus, 1 month on a farm basis, because many of our students come from the farming community. We are actually looking at how we structured the learnership, because we don't want to discourage students who haven't completed matric yet, who may then just fall by the wayside. That's why we say it's NQF 1 to 4, but it also depends on our own capacities. So that is an issue we're looking at, but mostly our selection focuses on, because of our resource constraints, on matric, can I say, graduates. They get first place in our course, but last year we started making accommodation for students who possibly don't have matric. And then just focusing on the continuous process, we are also encouraging our learnership students, because we recognize the difficulty around not having science, math subjects. We are encouraging a process of articulation. So the students who've fared quite well in the learnership year, we are encouraging them to apply for the diploma. We did have to make adjustments to the average percentage, where we lowered it, given all the challenges of last year, which are outside of the province. The employment issue is somewhat tricky, because of course we encourage students to have the on-farm placements before they register, but we find we need to do a lot of work at the beginning of the year and through the year, especially now that we've also got our diploma students who also do work integrated learning. So there's a constant back and forth between ourselves and the farmers, and through the learning program, there's engagement around the assessments and other employment type issues. So what we are finding is that farmers are actually also coming to us to ask of either young students or young adults who've been working on the farms to either get involved in the learnership or continue studies in the diploma or to do short courses. I hope that I have answered, and obviously outside of this we can send you a whole information package. Our closing dates we had to also adapt. They usually, and my colleague Mariki, who is anchoring student administration and in fact the learnership program currently, is a very useful resource on that. Our closing date is usually June, and we've shifted, but last year we shifted that to August, am I correct, Ms. Nielsen, to accommodate the complexities around being in lockdown and then being on campus and not on campus. So we realized that we had to ourselves be agile to make it student focused.
Sorry, Ms. Rodkin, thank you very much. What you share with us interests me greatly. That is why we're here today. But I also need to manage that time, and unfortunately, I'm not doing well in that respect. So if you could just keep that in mind as well, and perhaps, as you've offered, to share some of the information afterwards. Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. So, oh, sorry. We actually, for our short courses, engage in a needs analysis with our farmer support and development colleagues to identify the needs of the agricultural sector across the Western Cape. And I'm also happy to give you a short written report through the HOD. I'll just try to answer some of the questions very quickly here. Yes, RPL is time consuming. We very much aware, Chairperson, of the economics of education, hence looking at revisiting equine studies. We in fact downscaling the offering and looking at the short course format. The online rotation for our current program across the different courses. Yes, students do have to do online learning when they're off campus. So there is, in fact, very little break. And we've discussed that with the students and the lecturers. It's hard. But in order to get through the curriculum for the year, it is what it is. And I'm actually surprised at how positive the students have reacted, the students and the lecturers and other staff have been about that rotation. It's challenging, but it's doable. I will leave the question around the provincial public institution to the HOD.
Thank you. Over then to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think Ailey responded to most of the questions that were posed. Maybe I should start with the one by Member Bartman. What is National saying about the shift? I mean, that's exactly what we're struggling with. If it's not broken, why fix it? But we suspect that this has to do with the performance of other colleges of agriculture in the country that are not necessarily at the state or at the level where Elsenbeck is. And trying to solve that, then the approach is to lump everything together. And that's why we had been advised, and we advised by the executive authority that our stance should be really that we should object to this. And that's what we've been doing up to this point. And you've raised an issue about colleges responding to the needs of the sector in their local. That's exactly what is happening in the Western Cape. I mean, if you look at the offerings at the college, we're responding to the needs of the agricultural sector here. And therefore, you look at the list of partners, it's really the commodities that are in the Western Cape because themselves are shaping the curriculum of Elsenbeck. And we dread to think as to what will happen when this college does not respond to the needs of the farmers in the Western Cape. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. I would like us to send you a report around the throughput that you raised, because I think it's really a question of context. Because if you register 300 students this year, obviously your graduation will be referred to those that you registered 3 years ago. And I raised that concern with the team, and I think we need to put the right context to yourselves. Where I'm seated, if you look at the third year students that registered for this year, for instance, it's 100. And we graduate about 80 to 90, which is about 90%. And of course, we've got the dropouts in the process, which is about 10%, obviously for many other reasons. But I think a detailed report on that would be very, very useful. exploring of different models. That's exactly what we're doing. We're not only looking at the University of Stellenbosch or University of the Free State, we're also looking at other options because we have a duty in the Western Cape to protect the offerings of this college to the farming sector. And that's what we're going to do. You've raised an issue around the economics of education, and I think you're correct, but the challenge is we are by far the only institute that train winemakers. If we don't, nobody else will train them. So the question is, do we then say, because it's less people coming in, we stop offering that? The wine sector is a very important sector for the economy of this province and the country. And therefore, it's a balancing act that we needed to work on from time to time. And as the numbers indicate, all our wine students are all employed, some in this province and some in other provinces. And we think it's a huge contribution we're making into growing the wine sector. And that's what we have continued to do. And I think if there are other questions that we have not responded to, we can just be alerted to. And Member Bartman, you raised an issue around the agreement with Italy. I don't think we have plugged into that yet. We plugged mainly with Burgundy because of the College of Agriculture there and the sort of things we can connect. I mean, they are also the winemaking country, and obviously it was natural that the Elsenburg College will plug into that. The oldest agreement, by the way, that exists in the country, not only in the Western Cape. And we're still servicing that, and it's going strong, and we keep servicing it from both ends. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Maseko. Yes, I think you've been skipped.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just the last one. There was a challenge of the means of communication, the Afrikaans and English. How far are you with it?
And after that, can we then go over to Dr. Trautmann, please? Thank you.
Chair, we are multilingual as far as possible. We encourage students to, we actually do translation, so we do encourage students to use their mother tongues. Of course, we've got resource challenges to fully implement the program of tutoring, but we've got what we are calling a one-stop shop to address translation, mentoring, etc. Because it's one thing to learn, for example, in English, but then how do you study? So we're addressing all of those issues to have a fuller flexibility around learning.
Yeah, thank you. I think once you respond, and I give over to Honorable Maseko again, I think the bottom line is examination papers or assessments, in what languages would students be able to complete that. Honorable Maseko, does that ask your question?
It was too big, so
Yeah.
I was trying to say, are we having that systems for the kids?
Yes, we do.
Or we don't?
We do. If students choose to write in English or Afrikaans, they are allowed to do that, and we then translate. For the lecturer, it's not possible to for the lecturer also to mark in the language that the student has responded.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming in, I'm Matlodi, I'm a student. Just tell me what's going to happen. I don't know Afrikaans and English, I don't even know Xhosa. It's just English only. And I'm doing a short course. What is the process? Because if I'm not getting the answer, I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding you. I'm not getting how do you go about, when you say you translate, is the document that I received that is translated to English, or is the lecturer is going to teach me in Afrikaans and someone else will come and explain in English? How do you go about, just to straightforward to understand, how do you go about for me to understand? If you say translation in Parliament is totally different thing, that after one sentence is the sentence in another language.
So in class, lecturers are are encouraged to lecture in English, and then students will identify either before or afterwards to say, we need a translation into Afrikaans, and then we provide a translation of the notes. In the exam, students will indicate that they will write in their mother tongue, and we then translate the script for the lecturer. If the lecturer is not able to mark in that in that language, so there's a difference in terms of what happens in the class and in the examination room.
And perhaps you can just give us an indication, how strong is the demand for tuition in Afrikaans still? Are many students switching to English, or?
Actually, there's not such a huge demand, but it does depend on the subject, Chair. One would find that the more scientific courses, where historically, and you'll see when we respond to your throughput question, because we've actually done a quality assurance check on that, students would then clearly indicate that they prefer to study their notes in their mother tongue. Now, and there's an interesting issue that we also picking up, that because remember, we're busy with 3 languages. And so more often there's a request from Afrikaans students for translation, but not the other way around for the other mother tongues, English and Xhosa.
I see Dr. Sibopetsa wants to come in here.
Chair, very quickly, just to indicate that we are not where we were in 2014, where there were serious issues around language. We think that we've achieved quite a lot of progress, and there is harmony. So if the students choose Afrikaans, we oblige. If they choose English, we oblige. That's basically where we are. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we, unfortunately, due to time constraints, need to go over to Dr. Trautmann now. So Dr. Trautmann, we're in your hands. Looking forward.
Good morning, Chairperson, members of the Standing Committee. It's really a pleasure to have you here on the farm. Due to time constraints, I'm going to try and cut my presentation shorter, but without shortchanging you on the information. Unfortunately, I cannot work the presentation from here. So please excuse me for saying next slide. And someone down in the corridor is doing the next slide for me. So I hope Sydney can hear me very well. Some people call it unmanned aerial vehicles. Some people call it drones. We can call it whatever name. I think what's very important is to take note that technology is changing our world and changing agriculture. That's very important. Now, next slide, please. Let's ask ourselves, technology, is it for better or for worse? And I hope after this presentation, as well as the demonstration you're going to get today, you can choose for yourself, is it for better or for worse? Is it cutting down on opportunities, or is it really highlighting an explosion of opportunities for our young people? Now, this is an example. Next slide, please. It's actually quite a nice slide. I think one should get it for your garden, taking weeds out. And the question that would arise here is it taking away some jobs of someone who will be weeding most probably? We'll get back to that. Next slide, please. Let's look at the new tractor from Case. It was released in August 2016. We're not sure when it will come commercially and commonly available. But what is the real impact of a tractor without a driver? Just a question. Next slide. And I'm going to flip quickly through, Sydney, you can flip quickly through these slides. It's a number of slides onto one another, and it's all about a new form of meat. Meat being grown in laboratories? Are we saying that we're going to do away with livestock farmers? It's just posing a number of questions in terms of technology. Next slide, Sydney. Now, before we go into anything, we need the context. I mean, this department can go on a rampage and do different things about technology, but if it's not coherent, if we do not have the buy-in of our sector and the approval of our sector, and also showing our sector that we are 4IR friendly, then everything will be quite chaotic. And for that particular reason, we had some events happening in this department. I think the first event was appointing a technology expert in 2016. And this person brought a huge amount of tech savvy to this department and really bright sparked our minds in terms of what we can do as a government department. Because remember, government departments are not supposed to be innovative. We should think in our square boxes in triplicate, pink, yellow, and white. Innovation is not something that we should do. It's really something from the devil. And we even found that the procurement system, with all respect to my colleague here, the Chief Financial Officer, our procurement system could not accommodate innovation. However, once you sit down with your supply chain manager and you explain what you want to do, then the world goes open. And you will see today that this department is the front runner in innovation, technology. What's the word? We can procure technology with no problem, keeping to all the procurement rules, because you have to have your financial system, your financial officials understanding what technology is all about. So that was in 2016. 2017, we bought our first drone. And everyone said, no, why would you buy a drone? Who's going to play with this drone? Because a drone was seen as play. Now, government should never be seen as play. It should be play with purpose. What are we doing for the sector? So 2017, we bought the first drone, great excitement. And then only we realized, but this is opening up a world of technology for us. In 2018, we had the fourth IR evaluation done. So there was a nice sync of processes. And what I will show you today in this very short presentation is the 4IR and agriculture, our evaluation we did, the post-COVID evaluation we did, and then end with the drone program and give you more details on that. Next slide, please. So if we look at the 4IR, next slide, you will see that it's very technical. Now, we did a 4IR report done by the University of Stellenbosch Business School as a service provider, with layers of innovations that can be applied in government and also in the private sector. In actual fact, in agriculture, in actual fact, in the world. It is a huge elephant to eat. Next slide. Now, the outcome, it's a long report, but the outcome is, it's a very easy to understand one. The one is, we can decide we're going to go the bottom curve, the agri-valley of desolation. We keep on being government officials, agriculture keep on doing what they've been doing, and they become obsolete, they become old school, oudtyds. Or we can say we're at the agri-cul-de-sac. We keep on doing what we're doing and we think we're cute, and here and there's a bright spark, but it's nothing to write home about. Or we can say, let's look at the agri-renaissance. And that is exactly what you will see today. A new approach to agriculture and opening up the technology opportunities. Next slide, please. Now, the impact technologies that came from this presentation, you can open up the next slide as well, was first of all, thank you, water management technologies, automation or like robotics, drones, the Internet of Things, sensors, remote sensing, and so we can go on the impact technologies that would really have an effect on agriculture. And if you've got some spare time to read the full evaluation report, next slide, please, Sydney. Then the full evaluation report is on our website, and you can just take, even in the search engine, I typed in a few minutes ago, 4IR, and you will get all the reports. So with this very good basis, so we had the idea of technology, we bought the first drone, we've got this very good scientific basis. Next slide, please. We said, how do we take it from here further? And 4 very important improvement objectives came. First of all, agri-renaissance in the Western Cape. Secondly, the accelerated responsible technology adoption. Now I'm talking sector, I'm talking department. The third one is develop young people. That links to what my colleague Hailey has said today, developing also students in the 4IR domain. And you will also see it in action today. And the last one is really to look at the perceptions about 4IR. Some people see, yeah, it's something you buy a new machine and you get away with some of your farm workers or agri workers. In this case, your farm worker will be upskilled to operate that weeding machine, to operate the drone. So you will have a next level of very skilled agri workers. And it will bring a new dimension of agriculture to young people as well. Next slide, please. Now, we all know what happened during COVID. We also had a post-COVID evaluation done by Dirk Troske and his team. Next slide, please. And if you combine, just go down to all this, the subsections of this slide, please, Sydney. I'm not going to, due to time constraints, I'm not going to go into details. You've got the printout as well. What was very important coming from the COVID, post-COVID evaluation was also 4IR technology. Because the world has changed now. We hear about Moodle, we hear about virtual platforms. I think COVID has just given us a lack of push into a new technology space. And in the past, we had, when we did teaching with the, and chairperson, you will know, you had your overhead projector and you would do your transparencies in the class, and then you would forget that the little clappy of the overhead projector is not open, and everyone in the class would shout, "Maakie clappy oop, open the clappy." Now, so many years later, we're doing virtual meetings. What's the sound? Sit jou klank aan, put on your sound, mute, you are muted. And all of a sudden, the brain has just moved to a new dimension of open the clappy, open your overhead projector. It's just the mind is just in a new playing field. Next slide, please. Now, we can do a lot of context and we can do a lot of examples of reports, but government is really good in doing reports and putting it somewhere in the shelf. Now, we pride ourselves as a department that we don't do that. Our evaluations, our evaluation reports must go back to agriculture through the farm gate. What's the impact? Otherwise, you're just doing the real government thing. Evaluation report shelf. And so we get to big shelves with lots of reports and no action. We need to action what we develop and what the outcomes are. So you know, in several of our presentations we've done to your committee, the smart pen application that's widely used in our department. Next slide. The tractor tracker. Here we can see where a tractor moves. We can keep tabs on a tractor. We can see which farmer is using the tractor. Next slide. Next slide. Cape Farm Mapper, the very, very popular Cape Farm Mapper, our online tool. Everyone is using Cape Farm Mapper, and we saw during COVID, we saw that it just exploded. Why? People had more time to sit in front of their computer doing their planning. You can get layers of layers of layers. How many infrastructures in some areas? Where's the urban boundary? What type of crops are you finding here? So this is actually your old encyclopedia. You have it now online. It's an agricultural encyclopedia. Next slide, please. Fruit Look, very important. Managing your water use from your laptop, seeing from the satellite information, where do you have to irrigate or not. Next slide, please. And also, as colleague Hailey has mentioned, that with the University of Western Cape, we've also done, as part of the technology suite of innovations, we've also done some virtual reality with the University of Western Cape. Next slide, please. Now, unfortunately, the little banner is at the bottom, but we would now like to move into airspace, into our drone program. Next slide, please. Now, as I've mentioned, it's a very dangerous space to move in, because you can have a lot of innovations within your department, but it doesn't reach your farmers. And you sort of diverge away from your farmers, and you're running your own little innovation program here. On the other hand, government should always be abreast with what's happening out in the sector. So we should not think that we are so clever to have the only drone pilots. There are many out there. But how does our drone pilots talk to those drone pilots? How does our experts talk to the farmer who's got a drone already? And we were actually amazed, and Advocate Bartman, our technology guy, went to Laingsburg to talk to a farmers group one evening, because they wanted to know about drones. And he was so excited because he's going to tell these Laingsburg farmers the wow of drones. He came back the next day quite deflated, and I said, what's wrong? He said, all the farmers had drones. They all had drones. They wanted to know the next level of application. So government should lead, but also government should collaborate with farmers. Now, as I said, we bought our first drone in 2017. And then from there onwards, a lot of things just exploded. And the question is, do you just go in having a drone, a second drone, a third drone? At the moment, we've got 8 drones. Or are you also capacity building on your technology? Next slide, please. Now, we started off, and I must give accolades to Dr. Dirk Troski and his team, from taking drone training at Elsenburg from having a drone to having lots of drones. And that was mainly done by program research and technology development, and the engineers came on board and so forth. But then the training part and the awareness part was driven from Dirk and his team. Awareness, a 2-day workshop, right to the end where we've just graduated the second group of drone pilots. Next one, please. Now, the first group of drone pilots, this is at the rugby field down there at the Manor House. The first group of drone pilots, that was last year. And in front of you, you'll see a nice big drone. You will see it in operation today. The new spray drone that we bought to the value of 500,000 rand, where a farmer can now buy that drone and spot spray his crops or his vineyards, not waste a lot of chemicals. He knows exactly where the problem is because the drone can see, and you just spray there. And it carries a 20-liter capacity of insecticide or pesticide or fungicide, whatever the case may be. Next slide, please. The second group of pilots were graduating a few months ago. And now all of a sudden we talk about drones at work. It's not an educational tool anymore, but now it's at work. And the question is it our drones at work only for agriculture, or are we now rubbing shoulders with our farmers who's got drones to work? And how do we compare the expertise? So the drones we have, we use in our small grain trials. Our engineers are using it in terms of their planning, looking at alien clearing. It's really an eye in the sky. And in terms of the vets, they can do now a quick survey of animals. However, next slide, please. Uh, we should keep in mind that this is not unregulated. There are many, many rules and regulations about drones. We are busy at the moment to apply for our remote operators certificate for the department to be as a department registered to fly drones. However, a drone is a little aeroplane. So we will never be able to fly drones at our Otanikwa research farm, kilometers from the airport. So we want to first of all improve our own service delivery with our technology, of which drones is just one sample or example, but also be on the forefront to help farmers as well, and to learn from one another. And the most important thing is if we, and that's my last comment, we cannot keep technology to ourselves. Technology is there for the youth. And we will not, with all due respect, attract young people to agriculture with a tractor and a farm. It's beyond that. We need to attract the smart kids with smart farming. And I must tell you, the children of today, the young people of today, they're smart. Whether they sit in Laingsburg, whether they sit in Beaufort, they all have their little cell phones and they work those fingers. How do we bring those children into agriculture? Because on a farm, farming is just one part of a career in agriculture. Next slide, please. Bill Gates, and that's my concluding slide, said the advance of technology is based on making it fit in so that you don't really even notice it. So it's part of everyday life. And so our new technologies just become part of our life. I don't tell you that I've got a smartphone. I have it. I don't tell you that I have that. So as technology advances, it becomes part of our life. And I hope with the demo down at the Manor House, you will also see that government has taken all the instigators buying a drone, doing a 4-hour report, doing a post-COVID report, and put it into practice for advancing the department as well as the sector. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, HOD, and thank you, members.
Thank you. Members, I think we can, well, I anticipate a lot of questions, but perhaps if we could try and limit it, and then perhaps once we are informally together, we can engage with further questions. But any questions at this stage, honourable members? Honourable Bartman, you can go first.
I was laughing when you mentioned Laingsburg because I was about to say, when you've gone through a flood, when you've gone through drought, you've gone through COVID, and you go through load shedding on a daily basis, when there's little to no economic development in the smallest municipality in the country, you have to become innovative in how one does farming. So, but I wanted to actually, on that note, Dr. Troutman and is it Miss Rodkin are supposed to be hashtag besties because between agriculture college principal and research and technology chief director, your programs must speak to one another. The president said we are bringing robotics and coding into schools. I'm still waiting for that. I want to see whether robotics and the codings in schools are coming. But between the two of you, And the HOD must also assist you in engaging the Department of Education in order to make sure that robotics and coding comes to our schools. Because especially in rural towns where there's already agriculture happening and where you don't necessarily have the same opportunities that you have, for example, in a metro or in bigger districts, you are able to use subjects such as robotics and coding for things such as agricultural engineering. I don't know if that's a thing, but agricultural engineering is supposed to be a thing. I'm not sure if it already is. So please, if you could engage the Department of Basic Education to lobby for this. And also, we already know that we have Cape Access Centers from the Department of the Premier all over and Wi-Fi at public institutions. And I once said to our Provincial Minister of Education, we don't necessarily need an IT person in every school. You have Cape Access Centers. We already have people on our payroll to bring IT to schools, especially now during COVID. So with the budget hat, I also don't want to see us duplicating things. But Cape Access Center and Department of Basic Education and Agriculture needs to work together. And our procurement officials, and now I look at the CFO, Mr. Heisanger, you must please tell us, and that's my second question, what was different in the explanation that the agricultural department did that now in the agricultural department you understand how to procure for innovation and how to procure for technology so that we can go to the other departments and say, but agriculture achieved it, why can you not? Okay, so please, the lobbying for the coding and robotics, even if it's not in schools, there's also a after school program, I know about that. Please, if we can do partnerships between departments so we don't duplicate things as well, and we can use money smart. Cape Farm Mapper, I can give testimony to the wonderful work that Cape Farm Mapper does because I use it to do oversight over rural roads in Laingsburg and to check the water usage in my constituency. And then finally, I think this is just simply a comment. When it comes to smart kids and to smart agriculture, one of the reasons technology is important is not necessarily for the current farms that are there. That is to better and to scale and to grow and exports. But the reason it's also so important is because entry into any industry, into any market is often very expensive. Whether it comes to access to finance, access to resources, access to land, access to capacity. And technology will assist new entrants into the entry into agriculture. Thank you for the work that you are doing.
Thank you, Honorable Masek.
Thank you very much. I think it's more of a concern because of chairperson. You know, I've been in this standing committee the last term, and I know the strides that this department have made in and it was everything that had to happen at the same time. They had us doing oversight, they had the demands out there, and all the challenges of the drought and everything. So I really have to salute them for the work that they have done under the difficult circumstances, and to see the college where it is now after the cut of the 2014, 15, 16. It's really something that we have to say this department is always exceptional in whatever that they try to do or to respond to the demand out there. The only challenge that I know, I don't know how are we going to go about is to have the students that can be supplied to these departments from the Department of Basic Education. We went for an oversight and it was heartbreaking to listen to an inspector in one of the regions that was saying that when we were saying, how do you go about maybe to try and entice the students for your mathematics and he said, no, just, it's a lost hope. It's just a waste of money. I mean, that was an educator, an inspector. So it's a little bit difficult of, if you have an attitude like that of an official, especially in the farm schools. I mean, the farm schools are the heartbeat also of the agriculture because those kids have been, they grew up in agriculture, they live agriculture, they talk agriculture at home. And you find that there's a little bit of being disadvantaged because of there's no, the appetite from within the basic education for them to say, listen, this in fact can make you a millionaire, just to make it sexy for them to understand it's not about just to go and get on the tractor behind on the slave bar, and there's more to that. So it's just the unfortunate part that that communication, it's not this department that can do that. It's the basic education that can say that. How do we entice the kids in their farm school to say that this is the best thing that can ever happen to you? So that, Chair, is just a comment that I want to make and say that we still have a long way to go until we have a buy-in from the Department of the Basic Education to know that the heartbeat of this province is agriculture, and they have to assist in the farm schools. And I'm not worried more about those schools that are in the metro or in the towns within. Those in the farm schools where the kids are within the farms, I mean, that school is in a farm, are the ones that maybe we have to really give just the light at the end of the tunnel to say that you can be the owner, in fact, of where you are. And I don't know how are we, I don't have answers. And I know you don't have answers, but I can always throw it when they meet in the cabinet, Dr. Sobukwe, to say that let's have this conversation as the HODs and talk to the executive to say that, but we have to prioritize the farm schools and saying that how do we go about to really, already those kids are staying in the farms, they don't want to come to the towns. How do we maximize their potential from those young kids? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just a few questions from my side. The first one is, if you could perhaps just quickly tell us about the technology behind the drone, the photographic images, or because it seems to me that is actually where things are happening. The analysis of soil or the analysis of moisture content, I presume. Perhaps if you could just tell us what is needed or what is already available in that regard. The second one is, we know that, you know, in this province we've got intensive, but also what you call it, expansive farming. What would be the reach? Would for example, a sheep farmer be able to utilize a drone to go and look for lost sheep? Or, you know? And then lastly, it seems to me as if there are two technologies currently working against one another. I see more and more farmers make use of shade cloth, etc., to try and control the atmosphere, if I can use that, or the environment under which certain crops are produced. But then on the other hand, it seems, you know, to what extent can a drone then still be utilized, or are these working against one another? Thank you. And I think, unfortunately, we will have to have that as our last round of questions. Hopefully, we can engage informally afterwards.
Thank you, Chairperson. Allow me to answer a few. Yes, I hear what both Advocate Bartman and Mrs. Maseko is saying about the schools. And I think there's a lost layer that we miss. And that layer is our teachers. We should spend more time with our teachers, because a agricultural smart teacher will energize her students. Let me give you an example without wasting too much time. Every year, the last 2 years, we couldn't do it due to COVID. We bring primary school learners to Elsenburg to show them scarpies and bokkies and all those farm things, and they're little learners from primary schools. And there was this one black boy, and that little black boy, it was about 6 years ago, his words never lost me. It's still with me. When he saw the veterinary people are showing him what they do, he said, I want to become a veterinary technician, or even a vet one day. And one of my people asked him why. And listen to what that little boy said. He said, because I thought vets are only looking at white people's poodles. Maybe in a taxi where he was driving home with his mom, he saw a veterinary surgeon and white people were stopping there with a poodle. He had no exposure to the life of a farm vet. And if we can bring with our awareness, the awareness we had at Murraysburg, the awareness we have with teachers, to show the other world of agriculture, then we've won a lot. We've won a lot. So I think there's a layer that we have to talk to, and that's the teachers. Um, yes, smart children, smart technology, absolutely. Thank you for the compliment for Cape Farm Mapper. It's really doing very, very well. Procurement, maybe me and my colleague can answer that one, because I think it's a willing buyer and a willing listener. So we want to buy as the technology people, but we've got an amazing group of people at the buying side to listen. What do you want to buy? Do we have a procurement code for it? How do we buy it? And it's all about having an expert. That's first and foremost, having an expert who can explain in layman's terms what I want to buy. And maybe Floris can add to that. How did they adapt to what we wanted to buy?
No, it's not a problem. I think what we do is, number one, it is an attitude. Look and I say it every year, most probably the first management meeting we have, that National Treasury is again, uh, uh, overdone themselves, and they made more rules. So I tell the people straight, I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm here to give you more, and then we need to work from there. And I think we are reasonably successful, because also for the past 2 years and last year, we are very proud that we did not have one COMF. In other words, the Auditor General also buys what we're doing. But it is, as Ilse say, your customer must play with you. And with all due respect, we have a supply chain, very good supply chain people, but they don't know about vetting. If I say vetting, is the veterinarians. They don't know about research. That is where we need to understand what they do so that we can put it in supply chain terms. And quite frankly, there's not one, I think, that we've gotten that we couldn't do. It sometimes takes some time. I've told Dirk and Ilse, because the two of them tend to come up with questions that we shouldn't hear in government. And I told them that the day the two of you go, I'll just wave you goodbye myself, because then I don't have to think anymore. So it is a matter of actually coming back. I've got lovely people in terms of attitude, if you talk Abigail and those people. And so attitude up front, I think number one, to entry, basically, and then you need to apply, unfortunately, the technical. But we must also understand where we are, why supply chain is so difficult, because you just have to look around on what we've lost as a country. So the AG will tell you this is our topmost problem in terms of risk. If we get audited, basically we get audited forensic-wise every year. I'm talking about a normal audit, and I'm talking then the supply chain. So the point is, we need to make it work. Otherwise, we don't have a reason to be here anyway. I mean, we are there to support whatever the line must do. That's a bit philosophical, but that's the best answer I have. Thank you, Chair.
Maybe I can just add to, sorry, actually, first go. I just want to comment still on the data, but about procurement. A tech guy came to me and he said, I want to buy a Raspberry Pi. Now I said to him, listen, we don't do bakery stuff here. Because that's the technical word, a Raspberry Pi. I said, my boykie, tell me in layman's term, what is it? No, it's a mini computer. I said, then you tell me it's a mini computer. So then you go to the supply chain people, you don't go Raspberry Pis, you go mini computer. And this mini computer is linked to a camera. And now at Oudtshoorn in the incubators, we don't have to check how the little chicks go through the shell, how they what's the word? Will uitbroei, how they hatch. We can do it from the cell phone because the little Raspberry Pi is linked to the sensor, and we do it. So I think it's very important for tech people also to come a little down to the normal life not try to be too smart and understand what the other person needs to know from you. Talking about data, yes, you have different types of drones. You can go buy one at game and you can use it to watch your neighbor's wife at the pool. But that drone is really of no use for agriculture and for service delivery. It's a play. Once you talk about farmers drones, you can get various types and it's all about the camera. What camera do you buy? And that's where we give farmers also advice. If you need to go out to see where your sheep are or whether you have to fill your water supplies on an extensive farm in the Karoo, you've got a specific drone you have to buy. You don't have to have a very technical one. It's just what type of camera do I have to buy? If you, the ones you're going to see down here, we've got two drones flying, one with an NDVI camera, and that one is going to pick up in the grain patch in the trial where the disease is. So he's going to sense the spraying drone what to do, and the spraying drone will spray. So it's all about that. But very important, the data you get from the drone has to be in a format that you can understand it. So there must be a back office as well, where the data can go into a system where you understand and where you can make calculations from it. Absolutely. The last question about your netting, yes, it's posing a problem for us. We're very excited about netting. So you can do your aerial flyovers like we've done in the past. You will see your space and hectares of netting, but you will not know what's under it. And that's why when we do the flyover or the artificial or the intelligence project we do, we will have to go on the farm and ask the farmer what's under your netting. We've got a good idea quite often, blueberries or soft citrus, but it makes a problem because you can't go through the netting. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, HOD.
Thanks, Tim. I think we've responded to all the issues, Chairperson. I'm looking at your time, and I think the time has come for us to go fly. We have taken note of all the advice around engagement with education, and that's what we will do. But the strategy here is that we have taken a decision that we want to make all agricultural schools to have a home in this department. In fact, I've extended an invitation through ILSE that all the principals of all agricultural schools must come here because they need to plug into this department. In no time, many of us will not be here. We've got a responsibility to ensure that the kids that come out of that are able to run this department in no so a distant future. So that's really what we are doing. That is why we went to Maritzburg for 3 days, I think last month, what we call the Career Day, where we engage all the schools in Maritzburg. And this is now becoming an important event on the calendar of the department. Going forward, we'll be targeting communities on a 3-day, and particularly rural communities, because we really want to give them the opportunity. The drone tech, I think that's what we're going to see. And yeah, that's it from our side. A suggestion we want to make to you, Chairperson, because we need to drive to the college. If you so agree that we drive in, the CFO can take 3 of your team members, and I also take some, and Ilse, and maybe we just use 3 cars to go down to the college if that is a preferred, Chairperson.
I think we also have a minibus here.
You do?
No. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Perhaps, if, where are we going to meet one another? Down
at the basement.
At the basement.
That's where we meet, yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. And with that, I want to say thank you very much. Are we going to skip tea time? There's nobody waiting for us that will be angry at us.
No, I think we must have tea, otherwise it's fruitless.
Okay.
Please
So please, can we cut it short? And with that, I want to say thank you very much, Doctor, because I believe then that from the Manor House, we will probably be dispersing individually. I want to conclude that by saying thank you very much. Thank you for the time that you've set aside. Thank you for the presentations that you've prepared for us. And as a committee, we wish you well in your endeavors. It's really been enlightening and heartwarming to see what, the work of your department. And I sincerely do hope that also in terms of training, that internal training of your officers that are working in the field, that training will also, be benefiting from the work that is being done. People so often speak of head office now, that head office will allow the people in the furthest outposts of our province also to be able to share this knowledge with the farmers, etc. And honorable members, for you, your presence, your interest, thank you very much. And a warm word then also to our procedural officer and our other support officers. Thank you very much. And we'll see each other then in the basement. Thank you.